What's up, people of the internet, and welcome to my channel. So this channel is doing a bit of a rebranding, if you will, and this is going to be the first episode of my podcast, Coffee with Crime. And it is essentially because I love both coffee and crime. That sounds kind of weird. I love crime in the sense that not like I want to do crime, but like I like to research and do deep dives into crime, and kind of am a part-time investigator when all my kids go to bed. I actually thought I wanted to go into forensic nursing and pursue a career in this field, but I did not. However, it doesn't mean I can't start a podcast. And so today is going to be the first episode. I'm really excited to grow this podcast, and I hope that you do subscribe and stick around. So in today's episode, I thought I would just go ahead and kick off the podcast and discuss with you guys the new docuseries that just came out on Netflix, Dancing for the Devil, the 7M TIK TOK cult. That is the title of it. If you haven't seen it, definitely check it out. However, I should warn you now, there are going to be lots of spoilers in this podcast. So if you want to watch it and you don't want to have it spoiled for you guys, maybe pause this, go watch it, and then come back and we're gonna hash it out together. Otherwise though, we're just gonna get into it. Basically what it is the show explores how a man named Robert Shinn founded a church called the Shekinah Church. He is the founder, the pastor, the self-appointed man of God of this church, and this was in 1994. And he also co-founded the very, very successful, lucrative talent agency in LA, California. Both of these, his church and his talent agency, are located in LA, California. And so 7M Films, this is that talent agency that he co-founded with his son, Isaiah Shin. It is extremely successful, like I said. They represent some of the biggest names in like the social media, social influencer demographic. Lots of dancers, some actors, some musicians, and they have built a huge notoriety, millions of followers, and have brought in a ton of revenue. Like I said, it's a very lucrative talent agency. And despite its claims that 7M Films is a separate entity from Robert Shinn's church, and this is actually the official response from 7M Films that they put out on their Instagram. And you can pause and read this. I'll read a little bit of it though. It says that it is true that the CEO of 7M, Dr. Robert Shinn, is also the pastor of Shekinah Church. It is not true that there is any business affiliation between the two entities. The Shekinah Church and 7M are run and operated separate and apart from each other. It is quite common for a person of faith to own and operate one or many secular for-profit businesses. You do not have to be a member of the Shekinah Church to be represented by 7M, nor do you have to be represented by 7M to be a member of the Shekinah Church. Any claims to the contrary are simply wrong. Despite their claims that they are separate entities, many of the members of the Shekinah Church are also members of the 7M Films, vice versa. You get what I'm saying? There is a lot of overlap between the two. And so just first, before we really get into the nitty-gritty of it, I did want to point out that everything that I'm going to be talking about is pulled from very public sources. This is all public knowledge, sprinkled in, of course, with some of my opinions, some of my take. And so, as always, do your own research, form your own opinions. And when I discuss the alleged crimes regarding Robert Shinn, it is just that, it's alleged. Robert Shinn has not been convicted of anything just yet. It is said in the Netflix series he is set to go trial in 2025. So as of now, innocent until proven guilty. Of course, everything is alleged. I just put that out there because before we get into it, I just got to be careful with my wording. But yeah, let's just get into it. Let's go over the Netflix docuseries. I hope to really kind of recap what the show told us, and then also I hope to include a little bit more than maybe what we learned from the show, because I did do some deep diving. Oh my god, did I go down a rabbit hole. This is a doozy. Let's just get into it. All right, so first, who is Robert Shinn? So like I said, Robert Shinn, he developed the Shekinah Church in 19 1994. He developed this church. He is the pastor of this church. He is the self-appointed, prophet, man of God. And it really started as a very small church. Initially, there's only about 15 members, some of which were his family, and it was a very small community, really surrounded around the demographic of the Korean Americans. And so initially it felt like a very safe community for this small knit group. It is described as a church that is by invite only, so maybe not the most inclusive as far as you can't just walk into this church, right? You have to be invited to Robert Shinn's church. And then in addition to being a pastor, Robert had a lot of gigs on the side. So he had some mortgage companies, some insurance companies. He even owned like a couple flower shops. And really he was just trying to make a living, like we all can relate to. But what he was doing was he was employing members of his church to work for these businesses for very small amounts of money. And so from an outsider looking in, it really kind of appeared like, he wanted to make his money on the backs of other people's hard work. And so right away, you kind of get, like an ick that he is just employing these already vulnerable people, these members of his church, to do his labor for small amounts of money. And honestly, he was pretty successful, but it wasn't until 2021 when he co-founded 7M Films with his son, Isaiah Shinn, where he really hit it big and made his millions. And so Isaiah Shinn, he was doing a lot of filming. He was filming some of these big dancers, and he was getting into the scene that way. And Robert saw dollar signs, so to speak, right? Isaiah was filming these dancers that had millions of followers that really didn't have any kind of representation. And Robert saw an opportunity. And so Robert and Isaiah co-founded the 7M Films, and man, did it explode. So first, what does 7M mean? Because 7M actually has, some deeper meanings behind it. Now, if you look up 7M, if you Google 7M, it's actually tied to the Dominionist conservative Christian movement. And so what this movement basically aims to do is it aims to create a nation that is governed by Christians. That is what the Dominionist conservative Christian movement is. It wants to combine both Christianity and the governing body. So it does not want to have, obviously, like separation of church and state. Instead, it wants them to be one and the same. Another meaning behind 7M is that it stands for the 7 domains that shape the human mind. And so those include family, religion, education, government, media, entertainment, and business. Those are supposed to be the 7 domains that shape the human mind. And so 7M Films actually denies any correlation between the two. They said it is not affiliated with this conservative Christian movement. It is not affiliated with these 7 domains. It's something unrelated. But you could see why people would put 2 and 2 together and assume that 7M Films, which is co-founded by this Christian Shekinah pastor, why you might think that the two do have some sort of relation. And right away, when you hear this pastor that's also this talent agent that has this name, this double meaning, you get red flags right away. At least I do. I get red flags right away. And that might be because of some of my past and my upbringing. I mean, I'll be honest, I'm not a religious person by any means, but I do know quite a bit about the Bible. I'll get into that in just a second. I do know quite a bit about the Bible, and there is a quote from the Bible I'll read for you right now, and it says, "It is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich person to enter the kingdom of God." That's directly from the Bible. And so you really have to wonder if someone that claims to be, a devout Christian that follows this Christian Bible, but if they're also so focused on monetary gain, you really have to wonder if they're actually abiding by the Christian Bible and their standards, or if they're using religion and God and anointedness as more of like a tool and a control tactic. And really that is the vibe that I'm getting. I actually have a little bit of a unique and personal understanding when it comes to cults, because I arguably was raised in one. I was actually raised as a Jehovah's Witness. That is odd to say out loud. I don't typically talk about this with people, and I've never said this on the internet, but it's true. I was actually raised as a Jehovah's Witness, and this is some do describe this religion as a cult. And so I think it's really important to kind of go over what the definition of a cult is. And if you do a really quick Google search, you can see, a loose definition of the term cult. It's translated as a group that is typically led by an oftentimes charismatic, self-appointed leader that requires their followers to have an unwavering devotion to them. Oftentimes, the group is encouraged to disassociate from worldly things, which this helps, foster not only a cohesive environment within the church or the congregation, but it also helps to maintain a sense of control for whoever the leader is of said cult. And this was definitely something that I saw within the Jehovah's Witness congregation. They absolutely wanted their members of the congregation to disassociate from all worldly things. And this included, worldly people. And essentially what that meant is anyone that didn't follow the truth, the Jehovah's Witness truth. Anyone that was not affiliated with this congregation and did not follow the truth of this religion should be disassociated from. And this also meant that if members decided to leave the congregation, they were actually disfellowshipped. And so what that meant was not only were they excommunicated from the congregation and the members of the congregation, but if their family still belonged to the religion, they were excommunicated from them as well. And this really kind of was like a twofold thing. One, they wanted to protect the people that remained within the religion. They really believed that if you were disfellowshipped, that you were tainted, you could have demons attached to you. And so they wanted to protect the remaining members. On the other side too, it was meant to kind of encourage people to return to the religion, because if you're excommunicated from a community that you had grown up with, that that you rely on, your family members, it gets really, really difficult. And a lot of times people would come back. I saw it quite frequently when, especially teens within the religion, they would kind of want to rebel and they'd leave and they'd get disfellowshipped, but then they'd be excommunicated by their parents and their peers. And so they'd come back. I myself was disfellowshipped from the religion, and that is actually interesting because I saw a little bit of this firsthand as far as like being almost like viewed as tainted. I actually grew up in a very poor neighborhood, and a young girl who was also part of the Jehovah's Witnesses, even more poor than me, I tried to donate some of my clothes to her, and the mother refused my items because she was afraid that demons would be attached to them. And that's just really just that kind of thinking within this cult-like religions. It's very isolated within the group, and any worldly output is really very shunned and just excommunicated from. And we definitely saw this in Robert Shinn's religion as well. He encouraged members to not only die to themselves, that was a saying he said a lot, but also die to their family members. Essentially, he would encourage his members to completely discommunicate from any of their family members, peers, friends that weren't members of this invite-only, very all-inclusive church. In one of Robert's sermons, he said that members could leave the church at any time, but members who left and their families would then not be protected and would instead be prone to spiritual attacks or attacks by the devil. And I mean, for anyone that's believing in someone, believing that they're, a man of God and believing in these teachings, if they hear that, they're communicating with these people that don't belong to the church, or if they leave the church, then they could be, subject to, demons, or the family could be subject to demons, or they might go to hell. I mean, these are very, very controlling tactics and can be really scary. And you could see why these leaders could gain control quite easily if the right person comes along, the right vulnerable person comes along. And we see this specifically in the case of Miranda and Melanie Wilking. These two are sisters that are highlighted in this Netflix docuseries, and we see very clearly how a persuasive, controlling leader can really take control over a vulnerable person. And so I'll kind of just recap these sisters, Miranda and Melanie. The story with them is that initially they started as these sisters that did all of these collaborations together. They always did these dance routines together and had basically their own brand as these sisters before all of this even took place with 7M Films and the Shekinah Church. They were already really building themselves quite an empire. However, she began dating this B Dash, who was also, his real name is James, and he was huge in the dancing scene. And he slowly started introducing Miranda to his friends and to the people that were filming him and helping him create all this content. And guess who was filming him? Isaiah Shinn. And so B Dash introduced Miranda to Isaiah Shinn. Isaiah Shinn introduced Miranda to Robert Shin, and it said that Miranda basically abruptly signed over with this 7M Films. And once she did this, the Wilking's sister came to like a screeching halt. In the docuseries, Melanie, who is the younger sister of Miranda, basically says that she was initially kind of included in these collaborations with Isaiah and Robert Shin. They'd go over to their house, they'd have dinner, and in one story she recounts how she went over and had dinner with Robert, her sister, B Dash, and other dancers, and basically Robert, the pastor Robert, the weirdo Robert, basically told her that she was a sinner and that she had sinned already 1,000 times that day. And then they basically got into a circle with Robert in the middle, did like some speaking in tongues, and tried to heal Melanie of her sins. And from the sounds of it, kind of creeped Melanie out. I would be creeped out. For sure, I'd be like, someone's calling me, I have to go. That would be for sure my ticket out of there if someone started doing tongues in a circle around me. However, she kind of played it off because her sister was there and these dancers that she really looked up to, and she hung out for a little while. And then on a different date, like I said, Robert's church was by invite only, and so Melanie said that they were having church that night, but she wasn't invited. And she had actually had then these plans to take her friend to the airport. Well, Robert's daughter called Melanie and said, hey, no, actually Robert wants you here at church tonight. I need you to get here. Cancel your plans with your friend, get her an Uber, drop what you're doing. Robert wants you here right now. And Melanie basically said, no, like most normal people would do. I have plans. I promised my friend a ride to the airport. I can't. What kind of church calls you up and says, hey, drop what you're doing, get here now? Again, alarms should be going off. And for Melanie, they did. She said no, and she said right then and there, she dropped Robert and all of the things that were affiliated with him. The Shekinah Church, the 7M Films, she wanted nothing to do with it. Unfortunately, Miranda was either not as keen to the bizarre, controlling behaviors of Robert, or she was looking past them because she was seeing dollar signs. They were getting lots and lots of sponsors and gigs through this 7M Films. And so not only did she, sign with 7M Films, she was a member of Robert's Shekinah Church. She moved into one of his houses. She lived in this 7M house with other 7M members. And essentially she drank the Kool-Aid, if you know what I'm saying. She was all in. And then from there, she basically rebranded herself. Like I said, she was once, one of these Wilking sisters. Well, she deleted all of the social media posts that included her sister, basically excommunicated herself from her family, even went so far as to change her appearance. She chopped her hair off, and she just, like I said, really rebranded herself. When I say she excommunicated her family, I mean she really excommunicated them. Not only did she wipe them from her social media, But at the last minute, she bailed on going to her grandpa's funeral, which allegedly she was very close with her grandpa. It was just very strange. It was like 30 minutes before she was supposed to be going on an airplane to get to his funeral. Bailed on that, and then she went ahead and married B- without inviting any of her family, her parents, her sister. No one was at the wedding, and so obviously her family was very hurt, very confused, and they actually then went live on social media.
So today is my sister's birthday, and we're not, I don't even know where to start. We're not allowed to contact her, and it's really sad because we're blocked on absolutely everything. So whenever we try to say anything, like I even just commented on a video today, instantly blocked. January 18th was the worst day of our lives of last year. And basically, I don't know, do we want to say... This was totally on a whim, so I don't even really know. So January 18th, we were supposed to go home, and 30 minutes before we were leaving for the airport, Miranda calls my mom and dad and says she's not coming home. And it was like, what do you mean you're not coming home? She said she had COVID. She did not have COVID. We had had it the month prior. I mean, she was not sick at all. And she even said it. She even admitted that it wasn't because of COVID. She was just making that up.
And that she just couldn't come home. And that she was sorry, and we won't understand.
We won't understand, but she can't come home. And
so we tried to then, Melanie got on the flight, came home. The next couple of days, Kelly and I went and tried to get to see what was going on.
Came back here
in California, and spent a day and a half here. She was here at the condo. We talked to her for a couple hours, and she was a very different person. Different person that we've had than when she was home many
just
times.
Very disconnected,
yes.
Like just not
Yes.
herself at all,
Right.
and she couldn't explain why she wasn't.
And kept
coming
wanting
home.
to leave, and
my dad even texted me because I was in Michigan and they were here, and he said she keeps saying that she has to go film videos with James, should I let her go? And I said, well, if you let her go, that'll be the last time you're going to see her.
it was.
What were they going to do?
But she kept saying that when I said, please come home to Papa's funeral, you're going to regret it. And she said, I'll see. And I said, well, who do you have to ask? And she's like, oh, I'm afraid I'm going to make a mistake. I'm just learning. So whatever she's involved in, she's got some kind of control over her that is making her afraid of something. And as anyone that knows our family knows how close we've always been. And prior to her getting involved in this like religious group that she's involved in, we never ever had a disagreement or an argument, her and I.
So here's the thing too. Melanie also was going to these church things and everything, and she realized
we never really addressed that, so I guess we're addressing it.
Yeah.
Miranda is a part of a religious group, and she's not allowed to speak to us. And
that's the thing.
That's the thing that we've realized is Miranda, James, all these people that they're with, they're not in control of their lives. Someone else is controlling their lives.
And so yeah, that video, it went like really viral, as things on the internet do. Everybody, all the internet sleuths were really interested, trying to figure out, is Miranda in a cult? Is 7M Films a cult? And people really started honing in on Robert Shinn. And so guess what Robert Shinn then asked people to do? He actually asked members of his church to sign an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement.
That's why I have you sign NDA, so that you won't share this. Praise the Lord. Amen.
Again, big red flag. Bells should be going off for people. Alarms, something should be going off. In all my experience with growing up in a very strict religion, I've never had a pastor or a leader, an elder, ask me to sign an NDA. I mean, that sounds, obviously very suspicious, but he did. He asked his members to sign an NDA, many of which did without hesitation. Some of the members did not, and really did start to get some concerned feelings towards the pastor. I mean, right? And just when you think that Robert Shinn can't get any worse, he's using this guise of being a man of God and exploiting these dancers for money, which I mean, I really didn't even get into all of the money aspect of it. Not only did he, take commission, like a 20% commission of his dancers, which is apparently, according to these people, pretty normal for what he was doing, but he also took up to 30-40% of their earnings towards the church. And so he was raking in big time money for these talents that he was representing. And so not only was he exploiting these dancers and leading them in this cult-like religion, if you will, under the guise, of a man of God, a self-appointed, prophet, leader. Not only, right? I mean, that's enough to make you think, not very highly of this man. That's really only a tip of the iceberg. Come to find out, he actually has a lot more demons in his closet. So in a 2023 civil lawsuit, multiple individuals have actually come forward accusing Shin and other defendants of brainwashing, physical abuse, SA, emotional abuse, manipulation, and exploitation. Two of the individuals that are suing Robert include sisters Melanie and Priscilla Lee. They open up in the docuseries about their experiences with Robert, including their experiences with sexual abuse, emotional abuse, and exploitation as well. The two sisters became members of Robert's church early on, very early in his career, and unfortunately they were really vulnerable to Robert's controlling ways. They were estranged from their father, and their mother unfortunately was an alcoholic, very neglectful, often left them home alone to basically fend for themselves at a very young age. So it's really no wonder why, these sisters were so hopeful and eager to join this small knit community church for Korean Americans. They really didn't have any guardians, and so they were happy to be invited into this church, but that sense of security and sense of ease would eventually shift for the sisters. So eventually the sisters and other members of the church would be forced to live with specific members, and this would often isolate groups of the members. This included the sisters, who were eventually required to live in separate housings, and all of the members were required to ask for approval to go places, to make purchases, to do basically everything. They needed to go to what was referred to as their mentors to ask for approval, to do things, to purchase things. And the mentors would then go to Robert and would get his approval or not get his approval. It was really up to his discretion what the members of the church were able to do. They all needed to be in bed by 10 p.m. They needed to wake up by 5 p.m. so they could be to church at 6 a.m. And they just lived this extremely strict lifestyle, and it's easy now to see why people would refer to Robert Shinn's church as a cult. It was just such an isolating experience, very, very controlling. What was once supposed to be this safe haven, this community, turned into a really dark and sinister place. So one of the sisters, Melanie, would actually go on to report that Robert attempted to make sexual advances towards her, and he even wanted her to have sexual relations with another man within the church. So essentially, Robert Shinn was attempting to traffic Melanie within the church. It was then that Melanie decided that she had enough, and she requested a friend of hers to help basically break free of Robert Shinn and his church. And so her friend came over with the bat, had his truck, they got all of her belongings in, they hightailed out of there. Melanie wanted to take her sister Priscilla with her, but Priscilla refused to go. Robert Shinn convinced Priscilla that basically Melanie was cursed, and if Priscilla did leave with Melanie, that she would essentially go to hell. And Priscilla believed him, was easily manipulated by him. So Melanie did what she had to do and she left, and Priscilla stayed for over a decade longer. And it wasn't long after Melanie escaped that Priscilla also alleges that Robert began coercing her into sex with him as well. In the series, Priscilla would go on to say that she absolutely hated her experiences with Robert, and they started to literally make her physically ill. She had heartburn, vomiting, physically ill from her encounters with Robert. She was disgusted by him. And Robert turned this around and said, no, it's not because I'm coercing you and abusing you. It's actually your body ridding and purifying of all of its evil. That their relations were purifying her body, and that's why she was getting sick. Oof. He is just a disgusting human. Anyone that could work for this man really needs a morality check, because after learning of all these details, major ick. And yeah, Priscilla states that basically the sexual abuse would continue for a decade. And then in addition to the sisters, one of the dancers from the 7M house also is currently suing Robert for alleged sexual abuse. Her name is Kylie Douglas, and she basically states that she was complaining of back pain one day. Robert Shinn, basically saw an opportunity and said, hey, let me help adjust your back, which he started thrusting from behind her without her consent, obviously. But basically, from the sounds of it, Kylie gaslighted herself into thinking he's a man of God, he wouldn't have this ill intent, and tried to just brush it off. And it wasn't until later on that she realized, really the sick, sinister ways of Robert Shinn, and that he was actually being abusive towards her. So basically that's it in a nutshell. I'm sure there's a lot more, and maybe I'll do a part 2 to this in the future. But, what do I think? Like I said, all of that information was taken from public sources, the Netflix docuseries, lots of articles. I'll tag them in the description box below. Like I said, I took a deep dive. What do I think? I think Robert Shinn is motivated by money and greed. I don't think he's godly by any means at all. I think he uses that as a ploy, as a tactic, as a tool to manipulate people, to give their money, give their work, think that they're doing something for a greater good, when really they're just funneling in money to Robert Shinn. I also think he's a sexual deviant. This would not be the first time that a man of power, especially someone that claims to be a self-appointed man of God, prophet, pastor, whatever, this would not be the first time that this type of person would use this position of power to not only exploit people, but to abuse them as well. And so I'm definitely inclined to think that he's motivated by greed and he is a sexual deviant. That's my personal opinion. And then as far as the members of the 7M films, do I think that they are brainwashed? I think it's possible. If they truly believe in his teachings and that he is a man of God, and that, if they don't listen to him, they're gonna go to hell. I mean, if they are this malleable and this manipulated, it is possible that they are brainwashed. It happens. We've seen it in so many other cults. So it does happen. I also think it's possible that they are turning a blind eye to some of this because they are making so much money and they're living so comfortably. And, they do say that money is the root of all evil, and people are motivated by money, and they're making lots of it. So I think it's possible. I think it's possible that they basically sold their soul to the devil, so to speak. They excommunicated from their family, whatever they had to do to continue to live this lifestyle for the fame and the fortune. I do know that there's always multiple sides to a story. For example, the sisters, the Wilking sisters, there's going to be Melanie's side, there's going to be Miranda's side, and there's going to be the truth. There's typically 3 sides. I do think that Miranda should be able to share her side. So far, anything that she's shared on social media has been very, very surface. She hasn't really explained or gone into any detail as to why she completely excommunicated from her family, and not that she even needs to. You never know what goes on behind closed doors. I do know that there could be a side to the story that we're not getting.
I'm really safe. Doors are locked. I'm here talking to you guys. Never felt safer.
Are you in a cult? No. I'm not in a cult. I'm in a house. I'm in a marriage. But I'm not in a cult.
Regardless of, you know, the Wilking sisters and the dancers and the 7M members, in my personal opinion, I think it's pretty cut and dry that Robert Shinn is just a bad guy. He's not a man of God. He is money hungry, greedy, deviant, not a good guy. So that's just my opinion. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you enjoyed this podcast. I'm so excited to have finished my first one. I can't wait to continue more of these. So stay tuned. Definitely, if you like the video, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Hang around because lots more to come. All right, guys, but otherwise, wish you guys the best. Talk to you soon.